Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. This is the second in a two-part series that I'm doing about recruiters. The last show with Mark Jaffe focused on retained search recruiters. This one is focused on contingency recruiters. Both are designed to give you an idea of how recruiters think, how they conduct their practice, how they think about candidates, and how they're engaged in search. So hang in there. I've got a great guest here. I think you'll have fun with my introduction.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So on my last show, I did an interview with Mark Jaffe about being an executive recruiter, a retained search recruiter, and I thought on this show I would bring on someone to represent the contingency side. Now, my guest is known as the recruiting animal. I'm sorry, that is how he prefers to be addressed. I apologize. He's the recruiting animal representing the contingency side, and I know he also does retained search as well. So, Animal, please introduce yourself to my audience. Give them an idea of who you are and what you do.
Hi, Jeff. I'm a headhunter in Toronto. I do contingent search, as you said, and I've done retained. I'll just add that the retained searches I've done, and maybe we have to explain the term. I don't know if your listeners know it, but I've done them as sort of a subcontractor for big brand companies like Deloitte and Touche or Russell Reynolds or, guys who spun off from Korn Ferry, the big name executive search firms that bring in orders that I couldn't get on my own. So I'll just qualify that.
So what do you see as being the difference between being a retained search recruiter and a contingency search recruiter?
Okay, well, I personally don't see any difference. If I take an order, a job order, a search assignment from a company, I'll do my best to finish it. And that's how we always worked with a retained search as well. So now you told me yourself, I interviewed you a number of years ago, and you told me that I think you said the difference in your mind was that a contingent recruiter will get a bunch of orders in and then work the ones that are most likely to make money. And I know people allegedly work like that, but nobody I've worked with, and I've worked with a number of recruiters, works like that. They take an order and they try to work it start to finish. I'll go on just a tiny bit more. I've read articles, where people are warning job hunters, find out if it's a contingent recruiter or a retained search firm. I've never noticed any big difference. I don't think they have anything to worry about. Can I say, do I have time for one more point about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know how you run your show yet, but one thing I run into when I read recruiter discussions, some industries are very time sensitive. So if a recruiter gets a search assignment or a job order, bam, they'll send out a resume as fast as possible so they can beat out the other recruiters, get it on the desk of their client if they're contingent searches. The retained search firm doesn't have to worry about that. If you're on a retained search, you're the only firm doing the search, and if the company gets a candidate from some other source, they still have to pay you. So you don't really care where they come from, but if you're the contingent recruiter, you have to get it in there first, and that makes some recruiters, they'll send out a resume without even speaking to you. Then if you're working with another recruiting firm, they'll call you about the job. You'll say, go ahead, send in my resume. When that firm sends in the resume, the client says, well, I've already got it, right? And these two firms have a fight, and, the candidate says, I didn't speak to the first guy, and it's a big mess. So that's the only thing you have to make sure of. If a firm is calling you about a company, well, actually, there's nothing you can do about it until it explodes, but sometimes that happens.
And I'll simply say my experience is fights stopped happening years ago when automated systems started to get into play, and firms could make decisions as to who's entitled to the fee. And their contracts always are very clear. They say, we decide who we're going to pay, and it's solely at our discretion, and if you don't like it, too bad, don't sign the contract.
I'll introduce you to a guy. You tell him that's happening, because that doesn't happen all the time. But let's leave it at that.
That may be cross-cultural, a cross-border thing, but I just know I'm asked to sign any number of contracts that at times I've had to try and break, but that's a different conversation. So this weekend I did an article for LinkedIn that was very controversial. I probably got more than four times as many views on that article than I have for anything else I've written, and it was called "Why People Hate Third-Party Recruiters." And most of that's really about contingency recruiters rather than retained search recruiters. Why do you think people hate recruiters as much as they do?
Well, what I hear is that the recruiters don't get back to them. The recruiters are just trying to hustle a position. They don't really care whether it's suited to you or not. But I know a lot of recruiters now, more than I ever did, because of the internet. I meet them on discussion groups, and that might be a select few. I have no way of knowing. But they're mostly really nice people, and they're pretty smart too. So I don't know what they do in their daily practices, but the face I see are of really good, decent people. So you can't smear everybody like that. And I'm going to tell you, my first experience a recruiter was with a total jerk. I was just out of university. I didn't know anything about anything. Really, I was one of the most naive, dumb people you can imagine. Not that I'm a genius now. And one morning I get a call from a guy named Larry. I won't say his last name, even though I hate him still. And he said that he had my resume and that he wanted me to go to take a look at a job and way out in the suburbs. It would have been an hour for me to get there, and it was some kind of inventory clerk. I didn't know what an inventory clerk did. I had no plans in that direction, and I told him, you know what, that's pretty far and doesn't sound like something I'm interested in. I'm going to take a pass on it. And he started screaming at me. He says, you don't know how many people would be lucky to get this job, and he started yelling, like screaming like a nut, and then he hung up on me, right? So I called him back. I asked for him, and then I hung up on him, but I still didn't feel good. But I mean, he was a total jerk. I think, yeah. And so I'll stop there. But if you want, I can go on a bit more. But I think the main thing is that some people, a recruiter makes money by placing you, and if you go and get a job order, you get an offer from company B while he's trying to place you at company A, lots of people are not going to say, well, I think you should go to the other company because that's a really good deal. They might try to talk you into, this is why my client is the best for you, whether it really is or not. Chances are they're both really good, so you wouldn't really lose out big time if you listen to the recruiter, even if he didn't have your best interests at heart. But that's all. These recruiters will try to present themselves as consulting. Your consultant. Really, they've got a conflict of interest, though. They want you, whether they're retained or contingent. If you're right for the position, they want you to take the job. They want to fill the role, and so I think a lot of people are honest, but they've got a bias there that you have to take into account.
No question about it. I remember when I started off in recruiting back in the Stone Ages in the early 1970s, all our business cards said were things like career consultant, as though we were actually consulting with people to do anything other than taking the job we were representing. And, I remember this one guy, it was like my first week at the agency, and the owner walks in with a search assignment from the Federal Reserve Bank. And he has to present someone by that Friday. Now, this is Tuesday. I go to the file cabinet because there were no computers in 1972. And at the end of the day, I pulled out a resume of someone I went to college with. And he took the resume down. They decided they didn't want him for the consulting assignment. They brought him in for a full-time position. I earned a fee, but before he accepted the job, he's talking to me as though I know what I'm talking about in referring him to this firm. And so many recruiters, particularly like the junior contingency folks, don't really know anything about what they're talking about. Is that your experience? Is that what you sense? I know you and I only talk to senior people, but like the juniors, What do they really know?
I don't know if I only talk to, I don't know. Here's one of my weaknesses. I'm a generalist recruiter, and really these days it only really pays to have a niche, but I'm still a generalist. So and all the retained search firms I worked with, they were all generalists as well. So there's people doing it. The thing is, so I'm pretty good at finding people and, presenting a position, but, I have to get a client who's going to teach me something. And even so, when I present it to somebody in the field, they have to sometimes educate me. So I tend not to give people advice, but I guess people in a niche would be, more. You know what? I even forgot the question. So you have to. What was the question you wanted me to answer? I'm losing track.
It was about the juniors out there who basically.
The juniors. Let me just say, if somebody calls you up, I got a great position for you. It kind of is a red flag. It means they're trying to hustle you more than help you. But it doesn't mean they can't help you. Sort of. That's one of the things I want to make clear. Yeah, there's some creepy recruiters. Yes, there's a lot of hustlers. Yes, they've all got conflicts of interest. Doesn't mean they can't help you. They're calling you about positions that might be really good for you for free. So they're not charging you. So people should take a benign and open attitude to recruiters, whether they're, good ones or not.
Yeah, and everything you do, it's caveat emptor. You have to make the choice. You have to filter what seems to make sense, and when something doesn't seem to make sense, I'm sure at this stage in your life you have a finely tuned BS detector that can recognize BS. So as soon as it goes off, kind of deflect away that input from the recruiter so that you're not really listening to it and it's not affecting you because it's probably not right. So there's more I want to go into on this, but I want to talk with my audience about my insider tip for this show. So bear with me, Animal. I'll be right back to you. But first, folks, my job search insider tip. Now, people get fixated on resumes. I have to have a great resume. Resumes are important. My resume, is it a good resume? Resume. And then there's LinkedIn profile. I have to have a great profile. I'm not sure my profile's doing anything for me, yada, yada, yada. A friend of mine named Perry Newman did an article this week that he sent to me I thought was wonderful about the differences between the two and what their intentions are. And he defined it as being the difference between being the hunter and the hunted. When you have a resume, you have to think like the hunter in this case. You're providing it to people because of an introduction that you want to have made or that you're trying to get your foot in the door. You're aggressively promoting yourself. The LinkedIn profile is about being hunted. It's about being found. It's about being discerned and perceived as a possible fit for a job or an opportunity. So it has to have a different quality to it, a different sort of presentation to it that's going to allow people to locate you. So hunter, hunted, resume, LinkedIn profile. And now, if you like this, I want to encourage you to come over to my website. I've got a lot more content there, so visit thebiggamehunter.us. Go exploring because I've got hundreds of videos, podcasts of this show and my other one, articles I've written over the course of the years that will help you find work more quickly. So, again, thebiggamehunter.us. So let's come back to the recruiting animal, continue our conversation about recruiting, getting yourself situated.
I know where I want to start. I feel guilty because we should have right at the beginning, as soon as we were talking about the difference between retained search and contingent search, we should have defined what we mean for your audience because not everybody knows. Do you want to do it or should I?
Please do.
Okay. A retained search is you've got a client, a company looking for a person to fill a specialized position. So they give out the search to a recruiting firm, and they're going to pay them for doing the work, not just for placing the candidate. So they get 1/3 of the fee up front to do the research. Then when they give a short list...
Hence the term retain. So you are retaining them with that first third of the fee. Please continue, Animal.
Okay, when they deliver a short list of candidates for interviews, they get the second third of the fee. Then when the hire takes place, they get the third part. The point is they're getting paid to work for putting time in. Whether they actually make a hire or not, they get paid. A contingent recruiter means the fee is contingent, which means dependent upon someone actually getting hired. So if I can work my head off on a search, and if they never hire anybody from me, I don't get paid. So that's why these guys are, and sometimes a contingent recruiter will have an exclusive for, let's say, 30 or 60 days. The company promises not to give out the search to anybody else, but sometimes there's a number of companies working on the search at the same time, so that makes it into like a free-for-all, like I said before, where these guys are desperate to get their resumes out on the client's desk before anybody else, and they'll cut corners to do so. Whereas a retained search firm has an exclusive all the time. I think that pretty well covers it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. There are nuanced differences, but those are the major points between the two. So, when you do recruiting, how do you do your sourcing? Like, one of the things I love to talk with people about is the notion of acting like a recruiter, headhunting their own job. So, teach them some of the ways that you go sourcing to find people.
Well, the traditional way for recruiters, it's changed. Like now there's a lot of online databases. I'll go back in time a bit, though, because I think these things are still good to know. There's industrial directories. For instance, in Canada, I'd say the major one is the Scots Industrial Directory. These days, it's fantastic. You can actually access it through your library, from your own home. You log into the library, Toronto Public Library site, and you enter your card, and then you can access their database. Not the best version of their database, but a really suitable one. And you can use keyword searches by industry, and other variables, so locations, size of company, etc. And you can, come up with a list of companies that you want to market someone to, or that you want to find people in. Let's say we're talking about sourcing, but you're trying to source companies and the executives in them. Now with LinkedIn and other, websites, every company's got a website and all kinds of other databases, you can cross-reference the two. So they might just list the CEO and the purchasing manager and the CFO in one of these industrial directories. Then you can go online and find more people there as well. But the industrial directories are a great way to identify companies. Now, actually, I did a little work for NBC Los Angeles once a number of years ago, and I did some research in Los Angeles. They've got a great public library there as well, and there's Reference USA, or there's a number of directories that those libraries provide access to online as well. So it's just an amazing. When Jeff's talking about what it was like in the 70s, right? He would have to go to the library to get something like that probably. Now you can just sit in your own home and access these incredible, powerful databases to identify companies that you want to go to, and then call up the people who you might want to speak to, who you think are the hiring managers. And that's a whole other issue, how you call them. Is that enough for that, Jeff, or where do you want to go now?
That's a good starting place. So we've got the material from the reference books. You also brought up LinkedIn as a potential place, and I think everyone kind of has an idea of how LinkedIn works. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to, before I forget, because I think we're going to be running out of time soon, I'm going to throw in something that's a bit off the wall that people aren't aware of. Some companies, I don't know the kind of people who are, kind of workers who are listening to this program, but some companies these days are creating talent pipelines, and it's essentially an email list. And if once you get on them, they send you information about what's going on in the company every once in a while, and they establish sometimes communications between the internal recruiters and the potential candidates or the people on their pipeline. And there's a great article about it on LinkedIn. There's a guy named Peter Bugnato, Natto. He's an internal recruiter at Lockheed Martin, and he really has developed a very strong pipeline for himself. So if you want to if you're interested in a specific company, you should check and see if they have one of these talent pipelines, essentially an email list, and try to build a relationship with the recruiter if you're qualified, and that might be worthwhile. I know Zappos people are always talking about Zappos now, and they're doing versions of what I consider to be a similar thing. They'll call it a talent community instead. Jeff, where should we go now?
That's my job. And I'll just mention, folks, I did an interview a couple of weeks ago with a fellow named Brian Rice from Stryker, who spoke about talent pipelines that his firm uses. It's a common strategy that large organizations are using to reach out into the marketplace so that you know about positions they have open, things that the firm is doing, so that when you're ready to make a move, you're aware of what they're doing.
Okay, I should have known you covered it already, but I don't hear people telling candidates or job hunters to use them very often, so I wanted to put that in. Should I talk about LinkedIn now? Is that what you want to talk about?
Let me do my job here. You're trying to host from your chair.
Sorry,
from your show. Bear with me. and what I'll say, folks, is repetition's important because you may not have heard that show. You may not have heard that show unless I mentioned it. So if there are things that are referenced along the way, I'm going to point you to particular shows that you might hear more information about them. So with LinkedIn, what are people doing wrong? What can they do better?
Well, you gave a little ad there about resume writing and LinkedIn writing and profile services. First of all, lots of people are just inexperienced writers, and they'll blab about all kinds of things that are irrelevant. So sometimes it's really worthwhile to pay somebody, if they're good, to do a job for you on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile. One thing people should put there, they're afraid to put there, is their email address. LinkedIn has a limited amount. They have these in-mails. They cost a lot of money to get in touch with you. If your email address is in your summary right at the top of your profile, it makes it easy for someone to get in touch with you. And that's what you want. I mean, you might get some stuff you don't want, but you might get people who you're actually interested in contacting you that way as well. So
put your phone number in that area too, in the summary. Make it really easy for the recruiter to be able to reach out to you, whether it's corporate or third party. After all, they've got an opportunity. Why don't you want to make it easy for them, right?
Okay.
I apologize for interrupting there.
No, it's good. I think I tend to not say the phone number because some people are very sensitive about their privacy. So a special email address at least, and if you want to put your phone number there, that's great too. If you're writing a little profile for yourself, leave out all the fluff. I'm a heads down, responsible, time sensitive worker. Everybody just puts that in. I used to see it on resumes. I was telling Jeff before, and I would sometimes ask people, well, you're time sensitive, or what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example you're talking about? They would be stunned that someone actually asked them about it. They put it in their resume. There's a guy named Steve Levy. We're both friends with him. He's a very good recruiter, and he says every line in your resume, you should be able to explain what you mean. So just leave all that, fluff out and get down to the nitty-gritty stuff. That's something that I consider important. I'll say one more thing about LinkedIn. You could have go to GoDaddy.com or any ISP or domain service that provides addresses for the internet, and get an easy one like your address or some kind of simple words or your name, and you can tell people, here's my profile online. You can tell it to them at a party, and they'll remember it the next day because it's simple words rather than linkedin.com/in/ whatever word you've got at the suffix. So that's something that doesn't cost much, $10, $15, and it's better than a card, because if you get a simple domain name, it's easy for people to remember.
Great suggestion. Now, there's some unconventional sources, below the radar places that recruiters are going to look to find talent. Now, we know about LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I don't know of recruiters that fill jobs with with Twitter. I think most of us are using it there to do some homework on firms or homework on organizations, but I don't know that we're actually doing recruiting there. But there are other sites that we're all using to find talent that aren't named LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Which ones do you use, and what do you use them for?
Okay, I don't recruit IT people. I have, but I don't regularly recruit them. But every IT recruiter I know is really enthusiastic about GitHub and Stack Overflow. And if you're a programmer and you don't have anything there, any examples of your work, I've seen people say they have second thoughts about you. So those are very important if you're in that field. Then there's other professional networks. Do you want me to name a few? I know some. Okay?
Please.
There's a friend of mine, actually an online friend named Cliff Mintz. He's going to guest on my show. He used to be a scientist. Now he's gone into the social media world, and he's got a social network for scientists called BioCrowd. He says it helps bioprofessionals build relationships, exchange scientific information, and identify career opportunities. So I don't know if you're a scientist, but there's a lot of those things going around for everybody. Doximity is for doctors in the United States. Muckrack is for journalists. Kaggle is for data scientists. I just saw one today, WorkHands. It's for skilled tradespeople. And GrabCAD for mechanical engineers. These things are actually siphoning people away from LinkedIn. They're becoming much more popular. So something people might want to consider, depending on their profession.
That's really cool because minimally, these are places that you can establish more, I'm going to do it in the playful way, more of your bona fides, more of your qualifications than LinkedIn is going to allow you to do. And thus put yourself in the position to be found, because we're also doing Google searches to try and, or Bing searches, sorry, I have to be equal opportunity, Google or Bing searches to try and find people and not necessarily use LinkedIn as our primary source, since, frankly, that's getting overrun and overhyped. So in addition to LinkedIn, I know I'm going to secondary sources, like the ones that you mentioned, in order to find people. So it just becomes a good way. Do you find blogs are helpful for people? And if so, what should people blog about?
Yeah, blogging is great. The thing is, not many people are going to do it. It's just not reasonable to expect that a lot of people will. But if you start a blog in your own profession, you don't even have to. You can write about any. If you've got some good ideas or there's problems you've considered and things you might want to talk about, even in an interview. If you're actually in an interview, you can discuss them in separate blog postings on your blog, and then somebody can find you on Google and actually, you've demonstrated your knowledge, and they'll say, this person sounds pretty good. I'm going to contact him or her. You don't even have to write your own original ideas. You can go around to other blogs or other news articles or trade journal articles in your field and curate them. Essentially, you provide a link to the original. You cut out the key money lines so that people, can get something even if they just glance at your posting, and you can leave a comment about your thoughts about whatever's being discussed as well. I'd say it's a great way to promote yourself. I just know that not too many people it's too much work for most people. They're too busy.
And one other place that blogs come in handy is what's referred to on LinkedIn as their publishing platform. Which I mentioned in my own case earlier. What you're able to do is to publish an article, a video, a podcast onto their site, distribute it to your contacts, distribute it to the public, to Twitter followers, LinkedIn followers, Google Plus, and Facebook friends, so that you're able to get information about yourself out there. And it is searchable through Google, because everything these days is. And however you do it, whether you do an independent blog or I should say, copy the same material and put it onto LinkedIn on their publishing platform, it's just a good idea to differentiate yourself from the others that we're finding on the web.
Actually, just let me add something to that. I had a guest last week, a recruiter, an engineering recruiter, and I was very surprised to find out that he actually gets business by publishing articles about his areas of expertise on LinkedIn. I just thought there's so much garbage there that nobody ever pays any attention, but I was wrong. People contact him based on what he's written. I can't believe it even now, but I know it's true because he's a reliable person.
And just with this last article, I've gotten contacts from 3 firms that are interested in using my search services, all because I wrote an article entitled "Why People Hate Third-Party Recruiters." They felt understood about their positions, about their circumstances in dealing with recruiters, because I do know that whether you're on the corporate side or you're a job hunter, there are people out there that give our profession a bad reputation. They frustrate job hunters. They frustrate organizations. They just don't play well with others. So they kind of took that as good understanding of their circumstances, and I've got a call scheduled with one for Thursday and 2 for early next week. So I'm looking forward to picking up some business. So, Mr. Animal, we're coming up on the end of our time with one another. Are there any major things? Are there any more things that you want to share with my listeners that you think would be helpful to them about either working with contingency recruiters or job hunting in general?
A couple of things. Interviews. I'm an experienced interviewer. I'm not experienced at being interviewed. So before I did this interview, believe it or not, I actually, planned some things that I could talk about. So if you're going to be going into an interview, you have to, take the standard questions and, write out answers and learn them so well that they come out automatically, and then you can ad-lib. And I think that's really important. Maybe it's not a big issue for people who really know their areas well, but for me, I find being interviewed very difficult. One other thing, if you have a number of sites, like you've got a LinkedIn profile and a number of other profiles on any of these social media sites, About Me is a landing page, which is free, and you could put in a nice picture and links to all of your various footprints on the web. So about.me, it's something good to know.
Cool. Animal, thank you. I appreciate you making time today. How can folks find out about you, your book, other things that you do? What would be a good way?
Recruitinganimal.com. I've got all my stuff there, and you can find links to my show. I don't know if it's going to interest job hunters, but it's a bunch of recruiters calling in a line like this, yelling at each other. Essentially, I enjoy it. I can't say anybody else will. And I've got the book, psychologyofjobhunting.com. You can access it from recruitinganimal.com. And it's about cold calling, really, about what I think inhibits people and, how they might overcome their inhibitions, let's say. That's it.
Super. Mr. Animal, thank you. And folks, we'll be back real soon with more advice for you. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.